Where am I facing? This side. Good evening, everyone. Greetings to all of you across the country, from Zambezi to Limpopo, from Motare to Victoria Falls. Greetings to everyone who is in the diaspora, wherever you are, be it South Africa, United Kingdom, Canada, America, Europe, Australasia, wherever you are. My name is Fortune Daniel Molokele. I'm the Secretary for Communications in the National Executive of the Movement for Democratic Change, also known as the spokesperson for the party. Tonight is the first of our series that we are pioneering as a new communications department of the party, to make sure that at least once per week we feature one of our leaders on a topical issue, helping to explain it to the public, to the nation. And so as the spokesperson, I'll be the first one to start that process. And tonight we are focusing mostly on the topical issue that is affecting all of us here in Zimbabwe today, in the context of the social, economic, and political crisis that we are facing as a country. The million-dollar question is, what is the way forward? And so, as the MDC, we are a people's movement. We are a party that is anchored on labor, on the workers, on other stakeholders across the country. As you know, we are set up by different stakeholders in 1999. So we have also been consulting as a leadership and also as a membership. We've also been discussing on the big elephant in the room when it comes to the situation right now in Zimbabwe. Is there a way out? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Because as we are aware, especially in the last year, especially since the year started, things have been moving from bad to worse every day. Challenges: electricity, load shedding, water rationing, fuel queues, prices rising, currency problems, unemployment, endless unemployment. So there are a lot of social issues and economic issues that are facing us as Zimbabweans, and everyone is asking, is there a way out of this? And what exactly does the future look like beyond whatever we're going through today? And so as the MDC, we have sat down, we've consulted, and we've agreed that yes, indeed, there is a way out. We have come up with a structured strategy to outline the process of transforming the country from the crisis mode that is in into a visionary mode that it should be in. Because for a country to move forward, it must have a sense of unity, a sense of common understanding, a sense of common vision. And that is where we come in as the MDC. As a key player in the national development agenda, we have come up with a strategy which we launched through a policy document last week in Harare with the acronym RELOAD. What RELOAD stands for is Zimbabwe Roadmap to Economic Recovery, Legitimacy, Openness and Democracy. Zimbabwe's Roadmap to Economic Recovery, Legitimacy, Openness and Democracy. How do we transition from the crisis situation we're in right now to a much more focused and purposeful and visionary mode that we aspire to be in? And so as Zimbabweans, we are being challenged even through this RELOAD policy document, this RELOAD strategy document, to ensure that as a country we transform ourselves into the future beyond the current situation. We want to dream of a new Zimbabwe based on a shared national vision, one in which there is national consensus, agreement, tolerance, and inclusive politics. We seek once and for all to build strong, sustainable, and truly independent institutions that will be the bedrock of a progressive ethical state and a democratic developmental Zimbabwe. So as the MDC, we are also pushing, more importantly, because we recognize our unity and differences, we celebrate our diversity. It is important for us as a country to rethink the state of Zimbabwe, because we are avoiding the risk of failure of the state, and to ensure that through our diversity that we appreciate and celebrate, we create a functional modern state, a new Zimbabwe that we will also all be proud to be associated with. So, as we speak today, we need to recognize where we are. We face one important fundamental crisis. In our view, is the crisis of legitimacy, which in other ways you can call the crisis of governance, the crisis of political confidence, the crisis of leadership, where there is a huge trust deficit with the current political establishment. And as such, this crisis is manifesting itself in different formations. For example, we are talking about concern around state capture, where we see that some of the state institutions, state resources are being controlled by a few selected people who are politically connected, and the rest of the country is not even sure what's happening. The Auditor General's report is showing that there's widespread corruption, even in the parastatals. We also have the second challenge, which is clearly manifesting through an economic meltdown caused by the crisis of governance, patronage, corruption, and incompetence. So, as you might be aware, corruption has become so endemic, and it looks like the current political establishment does not have the political will to fight corruption in a sense. We are looking forward to the new leadership that has been set up, the commissioners for ZAC, but our major worry is that while they may have new powers, arresting powers, what we are concerned about is the independence of that commission, whether it will have the ability to deal with the corruption that is related to political elitism and patronage, to political cronyism, which since independence, as you might be aware, it's been difficult to handle cases of corruption for those who are highly connected politically. The third challenge is that of poverty and underdevelopment. Almost 40 years since independence, our people wallow in huge poverty. More than 83% of the population are surviving below the poverty datum line. The majority remain unemployed. The youth have no hope for a better tomorrow. Everyone is struggling for survival. If you are working, the terms and conditions of employment, especially the benefits and salaries, are at an all-time low. I would say that everyone who is getting a salary is the worst salary since independence. So, as the MDC, we are saying we need to find a way forward. There are 5 critical stages in the roadmap to restore Zimbabwe to the path of progress, to move away from this current state of regression. 1, obviously, we need to identify and accept all the existing challenges. Facing reality is the first step. Then recognizing that the national crisis is also multi-layered, and also that is anchored in failed politics, which means the failure of political leadership, and that the crisis manifests itself at different levels: political, economic, and socially. So the third point is around recognizing that the solution to the multi-layered crisis is a genuine joint political effort. As Zimbabweans, we need to work together, we need to find each other, we need to have common ground. No one should be able to go alone, but we need to have a multi-pronged political strategy. Also, the fourth point is around planning to overcome the existing challenges in a very structured way. And then also to ensure that there is action inclusive of sincere and genuine dialogue between the political players and also the people of Zimbabwe in general, to ensure that once you adopt a strategy or a plan as a country, as a nation, as a state, we implement it. So in order to create this new Zimbabwe, we reimagine the transition that needs to be controlled and managed and directed by us as a common front, as the people of Zimbabwe. This explains why we have come up with Reload. As I have explained, Reload is about Zimbabwe's roadmap to economic recovery, legitimacy, openness, and democracy. The roadmap entails 5 key elements, 5 key steps. And with those 5 key steps, we envisage that we can transition from this crisis that we're in to a progressive state. The first one is around increasing and ensuring that there is political and diplomatic pressure, where we will see advocacy and mobilization of all progressive and democratic forces to build national consensus on the resolution of the national crisis. I think we do have historical precedents since independence. For example, in 2007 and 2008, we had the Save Zimbabwe campaign, which was a multi-stakeholder approach, which led to the major constitutional and electoral reform that made sure that in Zimbabwe we came together and ended up having an early election in 2008. But also in 1997, we worked together when we started to engage around the issues around the constitution of the country, and that process led to the formation of the National Constitutional Assembly. And through the effort of every stakeholder in Zimbabwe, there was a constitutional commission, and in 2000 there was a referendum for a new constitution. We have precedents of Zimbabwe, of Zimbabweans from all different sectors, all different corners in their diversity, working together, pushing the country forward. Now is another opportunity for us as Zimbabweans to go beyond the political parties, to go beyond whatever form of bias we might have, and unite and work together to come up with a credible, bankable, and legitimate process of dialogue that is fully guaranteed by all the friends of Zimbabwe, by the international community, with specific key deliverables, benchmarks, and timelines through a mutually agreed and acceptable facilitator. So the negotiated process must have a facilitator also. And then beyond that, to seek an agreement as a country, as a nation, to ensure that we come up with a credible national transitional mechanism. This is an agreement on an implementation of a framework on the agreed positions. This should be done through a national transitional mechanism whose terms and details are to be agreed by the nation as a united front. Fourthly, we are also envisaging a situation whereby, as a country, we agree to go through comprehensive reforms. We adopt a comprehensive reform agenda where the implementation and rolling out of a comprehensive agenda will be based on the 5-point strategy that we've also come up with as the MDC and suggested. Fifthly, we also look at the end game. What will be the light at the end of the tunnel? We envisage a situation whereby, in order to depart from the crisis of legitimacy that we're in, the crisis of political uncertainty, for us to go through that, we need to then come up with free and fair elections. Electoral reforms must be pushed because they are key to break the vicious cycle and trap of hugely contested elections, which has arrested Zimbabwe for most of the past 40 years. It is time that Zimbabwe holds free, fair, legitimate, credible, and sound elections under full international supervision pursuant to the comprehensive reform process. We need to have that, because once we have an election result that cannot be disputed, the political institution that will come out of that will be supported by every Zimbabwean, and this will allow us to move forward. We do have a precedent in 2009 with the global political agreement, and an all-inclusive government was set up, and everyone rallied behind that government until 2013. As the MDC, we are saying the Zimbabweans are suffering, and therefore it cannot be business as usual. It is clear that the current political setup has failed, and through Reload, we are suggesting a way out, a roadmap that can create a soft landing for Zimbabwe to transition into the future. So this is what we are talking about as the MDC, working together as a country. I know some people have been asking, are we as MDC advocating for a return to the GNU, the all-inclusive government that was there between 2009 and 2013? No, not necessarily. We are advocating for a new, innovative approach in terms of a transitional mechanism, which as stakeholders will agree upon. We do not need to preempt ourselves. So as the MDC, we are not necessarily saying, let's go back to where we were. Because one of the major criticism of the global political agreement was that it was exclusionary. It only focused on the political parties that were in parliament at that time. But in order to move the country beyond the crisis mode that it is in, we need a solution that is all-inclusive beyond the political parties. A broader, dynamic, robust approach is needed. We need all the different stakeholders in Zimbabwe, similar to what we had in 2007 and 2008 with the Save Zimbabwe campaign. So as the MDC was saying, it should not be a solution that is just focusing on the political parties, but also every other crucial stakeholder in the country. So this is where we are at the moment. So I'm going to be responding to some of the questions or some of the comments that have come in. I think in terms of the way forward, the MDC is saying we do not have a monopoly. This is what we are suggesting. As Mai Chisamba would say, Doma Onero Ao. So we're saying as the MDC, we're proffering a clear and articulate way forward. It is now up to other stakeholders, other political parties to also suggest the way forward. So as the MDC, when we are talking about reload, we're talking about our own practical way forward. So we have no monopoly in terms of the strategic way forward. There are those who are suggesting that we need to go into the streets. Yes, it is one of the possibilities. As a party, we are considering it, we are consulting about it, and when the time is right, we will announce to the nation. Everything is done through careful thought process, through strategic thinking. As the MDC, we do not want to make knee-jerk decisions. We will not be rushed as a party to just come up with a strategy that will undermine the greater purpose of this country, the future of this country. So yes, we are clear in terms of the practical way forward. Some of the comments about the MDC itself internally, yes, it's true that we adopted a new constitution in the Congress that we recently held at the end of May in Gweru. And one of the key issues that the Congress delegates adopted was that the MDC needs to go back to the people in terms of its institutional structure. And now, as the MDC, we have put teeth to our slogan that we're a people's movement, we're a people's party, our power is in the people. So we are saying the MDC in terms of the institutional structure, we are now saying, according to the constitutional amendment from the recent Congress, that we promote what we call the supremacy of the branches. So we are now aligning ourselves with the process of setting up branches across the country that will be found at local level, in line with the whole electoral process around polling stations. So that is something that we've embarked upon as the MDC. We are deploying all our top leaders to be located among the people, because the party is a people's movement. It was born by the people of Zimbabwe. So that is one of the things that we are doing. And then there is a question around the rural community, around the rural communities. The MDC had a recent meeting, the leadership, and we agreed that it is time for us to have a robust strategy, a dynamic approach towards the rural constituencies. As you might be aware, for example, our youth assembly, they already have a program in place of engaging the rural community. Some of our constituencies, in metro constituencies like in Harare, have already come up with some strategies. One of them includes twinning with some of the constituencies in the rural area to provide them all the possible support as metro constituencies and all urban constituencies. Most importantly, we want to increase visibility through the structures on the ground in rural areas, and we also want to come up with initiatives that bring value to the people on the ground. Social initiatives, empowering, economically empowering initiatives that empower the people, material initiatives that empower the people on the ground in rural areas. And most importantly, there was some were complaining that the MDC is continuously having rallies in urban areas. For now, as a party, we have said our priority will no longer to host urban rallies, but we are going to engage the rural communities, the rural constituencies. And another issue that we are discussing is to ensure that those who represent the party are not people from urban areas who are parachute landing in rural constituencies, but they are people who are from the rural constituencies or who are visible and high profile in rural constituencies. And that selection of candidates is not done at the last minute, but well in advance. So those are some of the strategies that we are engaging. We do not want to be reduced into an urban party or a metro party. We want to defend the metro zones, or the what you call the zones of autonomy, the urban parts, but we also want to ensure that as the MDC, we are a party of every Zimbabwean. Zimbabweans in cities, Zimbabweans in towns, and Zimbabweans in rural areas. So yes, we are actively engaging the rural constituencies and the rural communities. We want the MDC to be accessible to everyone across the country. Someone is asking whether we are joining the dialogue that is already in place. No, we are not. We have already explained. We wrote a long letter where we explained the reason why we are not joining Pollard, because it is highly compromised and it's also exclusionary in nature. We want a solution that is all-inclusive. Right now it's focusing on political parties. We want a national dialogue process that involves all stakeholders, whether they are labor, whether they are other social movements, whether they are faith-based movements, churches, whether they are political parties. We want a more open and robust process that is all-inclusive and that is facilitated. ZANU-PF is a political party, MDC is a political party, they are all compromised, they are interested parties, so we cannot leave the fate of Zimbabwe in the hands of political parties. The crisis in Zimbabwe is a national crisis. It is a national problem that must be solved by all stakeholders. The political parties alone cannot be able to come up with a very comprehensive strategy. So we need to be clear that everyone should be invited. So we do not recognize the current Pollard process that has been set up. We will not support it. We want something much more broader and robust. Okay, I think I've answered most of the questions. I'm just double checking if there is something else different from what. Okay, there's a question from Jake, which is saying any membership audit in the pipeline. Definitely in line with the new constitution, in line with the amendment that was adopted at the recent Congress in Guero, where we are defining a new course for Zimbabwe. We agreed that the party must now be administratively structured from the ground. A polling-based strategy in terms of structures called branches. We promoted the supremacy of the branches. So our organizing department is busy implementing that resolution. So we'll be creating membership, we'll be creating structural leadership starting with the branches. And then those who are asking, how do you want to donate money? Our Treasury General Office, Senator Coltart and Senator Timbias, they are working with the rest of the team, with the rest of the leadership, to come up with ways, both modern, innovative ways, and also traditional ways, to ensure that every Zimbabwean who wants to fund the MDC, wants to fund the political party to administer itself, gets that opportunity. We will create all platforms that are accessible to the people in rural areas, in urban areas, that are accessible to people in the diaspora to help fund the party. The party belongs to the people, and if people are willing to contribute towards its financial strength, will be available. We will rely on the people of Zimbabwe. So the diaspora, the rural areas, the urban areas, everyone is welcome. And we will be soon announcing the different mechanisms, the different platforms to allow you to pay subscriptions, to allow you as Zimbabweans to make donations to the party. We know you love the party. And then there's a question, yeah. Okay. Someone is asking, how are you dealing with the fear factor? I think everyone is afraid. We've seen how brutal the state can be, the regime can be, how it is prepared. In January this year, we saw the internet was shut down, the army was unleashed, it had a door-to-door campaign. There's been forced disappearances. Itai Dzamara is one of the reminders, recent reminders. We have got history of Kukraund and so on. So we know that the state has the capacity to be brutal on its own citizens. So as a party, we are working together to ensure that once we start to do something in public, we are cognizant of some of the implications, because this is not a picnic. This is something that can turn out to be ugly, cause death and injury to many, displacement to many. So we are working on strategies as a party to ensure that whatever fears and concerns that we all have, we are clear in terms of how to address them. Fear is normal, but what we need to develop is strategies that are going to allow us to have hope and faith, and even commitment and dedication for a new Zimbabwe. Someone is saying the poor are donating again instead of helping them. I think, as we have already said, as the MDC, everyone in this country, the average person, is facing financial situations, individually, families, and so on. Basically, everyone in this country has become poor. So the party belongs to the poor. The party belongs to the workers. The party belongs to the peasants. The party belongs to everyone in Zimbabwe. So just like we all love the party, just like we all love the country, anyone who is willing to contribute is welcome. We are not seeking to exploit the poor, but we are seeking to empower the party, to empower the movement, so that it's funded by its own people. The people love the party. Because traditionally, there have been allegations that the MDC is a puppet movement, it's funded by international or Western donors. But as a party, we want to be grounded on Zimbabweans. Our major funding should come from Zimbabweans, and that is something that we are clear about. Okay. It looks like I have answered all the questions. I'm just double checking. Okay, it's true. I want to conclude by what one of us commented, to say that Rome was not built in a day. And as Zimbabweans, we need to understand that it's going to be a process. The transition that we want to embark upon will be something, not a fly-by-night process. We should be prepared to sacrifice. But for a new Zimbabwe to dawn, we all need to invest into it. So let us get ready, let us work together, let us unite, and continue to work together to define a new course for Zimbabwe. As the MDC, We believe that a new Zimbabwe is possible, a free, democratic Zimbabwe. And we, this year, are celebrating 20 years in existence. As you might be aware, the People's Movement was officially launched in 1999. So this year in September, we're turning 20 years. And the 20 years present us an opportunity to reflect and learn from what we have achieved in the last 20 years. For us to be where we are controlling most of the local governments, where we've got a big presence in parliament, where we are able to win a presidential election, it shows that we have done so well. We have made mistakes as a party, we have had our weaknesses, but we also have had a lot of success. We have managed to silence a lot of critics. So the next 20 years will be years even of learning from the last 20 years to ensure that the MDC as a movement continues to be relevant in contributing towards a new prosperous Zimbabwe, a Zimbabwe that is democratic, a Zimbabwe that we will all be proud of, a great Zimbabwe, a nation that will be reckoned among the nations, a nation that will be recognized in the global stage, a Pan-African nation that is going to be a leader in terms of social, economic, and political transformation. We thank you all for being part of this first session. We will continue next week because it's going to be a weekly series. We'll have one of our leaders coming online to discuss a topical issue. So this was the first, but we'll be having more series as we continue. So thank you for joining us. Please keep supporting the MDC. Those who want to read the document, the reload document, is accessible in our WhatsApp groups. It's there already, but on our website, in our Facebook page, look for it, you'll find it. We'll try to get as many print copies as possible. We now have some print copies, especially to those in the rural areas. We also have the Smart document, which is our election campaign document, which we launched last year. It's also still available. It also helps to give a contextual analysis in terms of the way forward as a country. So thank you so much for joining us. See you again next week. May God bless you. May God bless Zimbabwe. Thank you. Bye-bye.